All right, let's dive right into this. If you're studying physics, you know firsthand that the deeper we look into the fabric of reality, the more things just seem to unravel. Today, we're exploring a truly fascinating conceptual framework that attempts to reweave that very fabric. So for this explainer, we are going to unpack the information of information theory, or TI² for short, as a foundational ontological synthesis. Essentially, it's a theory proposing a radical shift in how we fundamentally define reality itself.
So what if the universe isn't actually made of matter, but of information? I know it's a super provocative question, right? And I want to immediately challenge your classical understanding here. We are completely wired to think of reality in terms of particles, fields, and geometric curvatures. But the ontological stakes of this analysis, they're entirely different. This framework suggests that the absolute base layer of reality is simply information interacting with information.
Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the new ontological paradigm, then cover the informational triad, run through the 7 fundamental principles, and then fundamentally redefine things with gravity, curvature versus congestion, and time as a local rhythm. Finally, we'll wrap up with the end of dark entities. First up, Section 1, the new ontological paradigm. Let's look at the historical crisis that got us here. Okay, we have to acknowledge the elephant in the classroom. As physics students, you're all too familiar with the persistent, frankly frustrating incompatibility between quantum mechanics and general relativity. On one hand, you have quantum mechanics, which is incredibly mathematically precise, but conceptually full of paradoxes the second you try to scale it up. And on the other hand, Einstein's general relativity is this absolutely elegant framework for the cosmos, but it completely falls apart at the quantum level. Every time we try to mesh them together, we end up having to invent invisible entities to make the math work. TI² steps in as a bridge here, suggesting that these glaring contradictions are just symptoms of ignoring the fundamental role of information. Now, I want you to keep this specific number in mind, 61. In the TI² framework, this represents the 61 orders of magnitude of the static informational grid. Think about that scale, from the incredibly tiny Planck length at about 10 to the minus 35 meters, all the way up to the observable universe at 10 to the 26 meters. That massive ratio of 10 to the 61st power, that serves as the invariable, discrete architecture of reality. It's literally a static, finite grid where absolutely all informational interactions take place.
Moving into Section 2, the informational triad, let's break down the 3 fundamental states.
So, within that massive grid, how does reality actually manifest? Well, it all boils down to a core postulate. Reality consists of information interacting with information. The very first state is called existence. You can think of this as information that simply propagates outward, essentially informing the rest of the universe that a node is present. It's a stable baseline. It defines foundational properties like mass and identity. And because it's constantly announcing its presence to the rest of the grid, this state is exactly what generates the effects that we've traditionally mislabeled as gravity and inertia.
The second state is interaction. Now, this is the realm of observable physics. When flows of existence cross paths, they exchange and reorganize local states. This is exactly where we measure collisions, chemical reactions, and the dynamic forces that we interact with every single day in the lab.
The third state is resonance, and honestly, this brilliantly clears up phenomena like quantum entanglement. Resonance is a global synchronization state. It means multiple informational nodes are updating in perfect coherence. So it's not about some mysterious signal traveling faster than the speed of light. Rather, it's about simultaneous, synchronized updates happening across the informational mesh.
Next is Section 3, the 7 fundamental principles, basically the new rules of the universe. I'm going to give you a rapid-fire overview of these 7 principles. 1. Relativity. Information only exists relative to other information. 2. Persistence. Informational states inherently resist change. 3. Congestion. High density actually slows down local updates. 4. Locality. Time is strictly a local phenomenon. 5. Quantization. Updates happen in discrete, measurable packets. 6. Entropy, which is simply a difference in informational rhythms. And 7. Coherence, ensuring the global reality remains consistent. The big takeaway here is that these principles completely replace your traditional physical categories, like mechanical force and continuous fields, with informational coherence and flow.
The source material summarizes one of the most critical points perfectly. In regions of higher informational density, the update rhythm of the mesh suffers a relative delay.
This right here is the incredibly counterintuitive principle of informational congestion. Think of it like a computer. If a region has way too much information to process, its local frame rate, so to speak, drops significantly.
Which brings us perfectly to Section 4, gravity. We are looking at curvature versus congestion.
Get ready, because we are about to confront your classical physics training head-on. We are directly contrasting Einstein's dynamic, bendable geometry with TI²'s concept of emergent gravity. In general relativity, mass literally curves space-time. But in TI², space is entirely static. Gravity isn't a fundamental force, and it certainly isn't a warped dimension. It is simply an informational traffic jam. When there is high informational density, the local update rate slows down, and that creates a temporal gradient that naturally pulls nearby informational states inward.
And what about black holes? In classical physics, they inevitably lead to mathematical singularities, those pesky points of infinite density where all our equations just break. Well, TI² elegantly solves the black hole information paradox without ever needing to invent singularities. A black hole is just a zone of maximal informational congestion. The information is so dense that it gets trapped in internal cycles of coherence, completely blocking resonance from escaping to the outside mesh. The information isn't destroyed at all, it's literally just stuck in the universe's absolute worst traffic jam.
Section 5. Time as a local rhythm. Saying goodbye to the universal clock. If gravity is really just an emergent effect of delayed processing, that means we have to completely abandon the idea of time as a universal metric. Let's walk through a super simple, intuitive analogy. Imagine a tractor with two continuous tracks. Step 1, picture those tracks as flows of information moving through space. Step 2, the tractor hits a thick patch of mud on one side, which represents a region of higher informational congestion, and naturally that specific track slows down. Step 3, because one track is moving slower than the other, the entire tractor curves towards the slower side. This is exactly how local time variation creates the emergent effect of gravity. Objects fall toward mass simply because the informational flow is updating slower on the side closest to the mass. No physical bending of space is required whatsoever.
The implications here for the entire cosmos are staggering. Time is nothing more than the local processing rhythm of the informational mesh, and this means there is no single objective age of the universe. A region of deep, empty space with extremely low informational density has processed far more ticks of time than a highly congested galaxy. Relativistic velocities, length contraction, time dilation, these aren't geometric distortions in the fabric of space, they are simply variations in the local update rate of information.
Finally, Section 6. The end of dark entities. It's time for some cosmological cleanup.
For decades now, we've been frantically plugging holes in our cosmological models using ad hoc concepts like dark energy and dark matter. Basically, invisible entities we can't actually detect, but assume must exist just to make the math work out. TI² replaces dark energy entirely with the concept of entropic delay. The apparent cosmic acceleration we observe isn't some mysterious, invisible repulsive force. It's simply a delay in entropy between incredibly dense regions and very sparse regions that are updating at entirely different speeds.
And what about dark matter? Well, if information propagates as waves of coherence across the mesh, those waves can absolutely interfere with each other. Constructive interference reinforces informational flow, which creates higher local congestion. And guess what? That looks exactly like the missing dark matter halos that are supposedly holding galaxies together. On the flip side, destructive interference cancels out informational flows, which perfectly explains weird anomalies like the NGC 1052 DF2 galaxy, which appears to have almost no dark matter at all. By treating mass density as a wave interference pattern, these massive cosmological mysteries become completely predictable.
So, as physics students, you really have a choice in how you view the universe going forward. You can continue adding invisible entities and complex band-aids to patch up a failing geometric model, or you can start looking at the foundational code of reality itself. The ultimate question is, are you ready to stop searching in the dark for missing matter and start observing informational resonance?